Okay, I originally wanted to make this video on all the side stories and what you can farm from each of the events, but after recording all the Cross the Blaze clips, I realized that if I added Knights of Blood into this video, it would probably make it pretty long. So I decided to do it later, and that's because these events are already in global, and I'm pretty sure most people know what these do, but I wanted to go over Across the Blaze mainly because not all these events are in global yet, and I recently learned what Luahn's and Victoria's event does, so I decided maybe if y'all wanted to know what they've done too, in case nobody knows the translations to them. So yeah, now I'm gonna roll some gameplay and we're gonna get into this now. Starting off with Cross the Blaze episode 1, the first item you can farm is Supernova, and it's a 5-star physical, and for 10 seconds increases own arts gauge by 1, and it also increases physical damage by 20%. And its ability increases attack by 10% when near death. And the second item you can farm from this event, it's called Fighting Spirit, and for 20 seconds all allies get 1,000 shield, and it negates up to 15 physical damage. And its ability increases own skill CT time by 5%. I would say both of these equipment are not worth farming because Supernova, it sounds good on paper if you're lacking a physical damage item, but there's other equipment that you can find that boosts damage way better. And then the 10 arts is not really helpful when it's on a 35 cooldown. So it's better to farm like any other item like Relic Rhodeus from one of the giant bosses in the evolution dungeons. And the defense equipment, you could farm for that if you're lacking a damage mitigation item, and that's fine for early game, but if you're trying to use it for end game content, you want to find much use there. But yeah, now we're gonna go on to episode 2. The first farmable is a 5-star support, and it's called Itolai, and its skill increases target's art gauge by 4 for 20 seconds. If the loot user is light, also increases own magic damage by 15% for 20 seconds. And its ability reduces magic damage from enemies by 5%. And the second item is a 5-star physical, and it's called Shaving Road, and its skill for 8 seconds increases own damage to light enemies and giant bosses by 20%. And its ability reduces skill CT by 5%. Neither of these equipment are particularly worth farming for. The only one I would say that's notable to farm for is the Itolai, because it's a okay single target arts gauge item, but it still gets beat out by LDH in the terms of art gen. But if you're lacking any support item, you could farm for this, but there's still other farmables that you can farm that just have better arts per second than that. And then Shaving Road is pretty selfish damage boosting item, and you're rarely gonna fight a light enemy or a giant boss, and the 20% is not really anything to brag about. And now we're gonna go on to episode 3. Grandstand is the first item you can farm for, and it's a 5-star physical, and its skill for 12 seconds increases own physical damage by 25%, and if the user is God, increases accuracy by 30%. Abilities increases skill recovery by 5%. And then the 4-star physical is Arvor's Coat, and the skill for 8 seconds, if the user is light, increases own damage by 10%. Abilities increases defense by 5%. The 5-star physical is actually not too bad to farm for if you're looking to speed run, because the animation is so quick. It's fast like True Nanashi, Dark Kane's true weapon, and it can clear waves super quick. And it's also decent enough if you want to use it for physical nuking, but the only problem is it's pretty selfish and only applies to yourself. But if you're looking to clear waves, this item could be worthwhile to farm for. And the 4-star physical is actually pretty decent. There's not really many good 4-star physical items that I know of, but this is actually not too bad if you're trying to maximize your damage output, especially on light nukes. And now we're gonna go to episode 4. The event farmables from the Angelus event. It's a 5-star physical and it's called Drangola Clama. And its skill for 12 seconds increases own crit damage by 30%. And its ability increases break power by 2%. And the 4-star magical item is called Muzerne. And its skill for 8 seconds increases own damage by 5%. And if the user is fire, it increases it by additional 10%. And its ability increases magic damage evasion by 5%. Muzerne is actually the only decent equipment you can farm from this event because it's going to be mainly used to fill the 4-star magic slot because there's not really many good ones unless like you're going for the gotcha ones. But the 5% damage increase is pretty helpful, but it's not going to make a big difference unless you like equipped it on a fire unit. Then you're going to see a slight improvement to your damage. But the 5-star physical is not worth farming at all because the crit damage boosting is pretty selfish and the CT is super long, and why would you use it compared to like any other nuking item in the game? And now we're gonna go on to episode 5. For Eagles event, the first item is a 5-star defense item and it's called Arsenal. And its skill for 10 seconds increases allies' physical resistance and attack by 15%. And its passive increases BE generation by 5%. And its 4-star physical farmable is called Arsenal Tough. Skill for 10 seconds increases own defense by 20%. And its passive, when near death, increases skill recovery by 10%. These equipment are not too bad, Arsenal being okay, especially if you want to use it during nukes because it increasing your attack by 15% is actually pretty good for a defense item. Like the only other defense items you can look for that I know of is like Iris Change of Pace for that 30% stat increase, or Holy Armor Elderenge farmed from Celia's event that increases your damage based on defense. So it has a similar concept of being a slot bender, but the 4-star physical is actually not that great. Increasing your own defense by 20% is not really useful, especially on a 4-star physical slot. And yeah, now we're on to episode 6. Frustration is the first item and it's a 5-star magic, and its skill for 8 seconds reduces the enemy's magic resistance by 10%, and its ability increases BE output by 10%. For the 5-star healing, it's called Dream Eating, and its skill increases the target's HP by 300 and health recovery rate by 25% for 10 seconds. And its ability, when near death, increases skill CT recovery by 10%. Neither of these items are really worth farming for, really. Frustration might be worth farming for if you're lacking a magic resistance down item, but the healing item is not really worth farming unless you're lacking a 5-star healing item. But other than that, now we move on to episode 7. Victoria's event, the first item is called Cantabile, and it's a 5-star magic, and its skill for 10 seconds reduces the enemy's light and magic resistance by 15%, and its ability increases match HP by 5%. And the 4-star healing is called Buffalado, and its skill heals all allies HP by 20%. If the user is light, heals all allies HP by 40% instead. If the user is spirit, increases own art gauge by 20. and its ability increases magic damage by 10%. Both of these items are worth farming for. The 5-star magic is pretty decent because it gives you 2 types of debuffs, light and magic resistance debuff, and it's 15%. So if you're lacking these debuffs, or you want to increase the damage slightly for your light and magic units, this could help you if you don't have any other item. But the 4-star healing is actually really good. The 20% healing is pretty big, and it having a variety of different uses. Like if it's put on a light user, the 40% is pretty big. It's like a substantial increase in health. And if the user's spirit increases R1 gauge, is really good. It's similar to Necrolis from Regulus event, and then increases your R gauge whenever it's used on a demon unit. So if you can get a spirit with a healing equipment slot, this can help them out, especially if you can get an Archgener, that spirit. You're gonna find big uses from this. And now we're gonna move on to the final one, and it's episode 8. Starting off with the 5-star physical, it's called Keegan, and the skill for 10 seconds increases own attack and dark damage by 35%. And its ability increases crit damage by 10%. For the 4-star magic, it's called Mahoroba, and its skill for 5 seconds heals the HP of 2% of the damage taken. And its passive increases defense by 5%. Honestly, you wouldn't go wrong for farming both of these equipment, because Keegan increases your own attack and dark damage by 35%. It's actually a significant boost to a dark unit's damage, and the crit damage boosting is actually icing on a cake, where it just helps out your damage, and is actually a pretty good starting item if you want to farm for it. And the 4-star magical item is pretty alright, especially if you want to put on a tank. Like a tank that can come to mind is Gerald with his 4-star magical slot. If you want to block more damage, especially with the ability increasing your defense by 5%. Okay, this is going to be the end of the video, and I'm going to wind up doing Blood Nights on a later date, going over all the event farmables. But I also want to say that in the description, I'm going to be leaving timestamps to each of the Cross the Blaze episodes in case anyone wants to look for a specific one. And yeah, I want to thank you all for watching. Thank you.
Oh, I could be all it is you need, 'cause we are trying to find a way